It's embarrassing as a Canadian to have to listen to some of this stuff. It's all marketing. It's all big money. This oil is all going to China. It's not for Canada. It's not for the United States. It's not ours. It belongs to the oil companies. And Canada's government is behind making this happen. It's truly a disaster to anyone with an environmental conscience.
Okay, multi-millionaire rock star Neil Young is accusing the Harper government for trading integrity and for money when it comes to the oil sands. Of course, Young made these comments at the first of 4 concerts he's holding to help raise money for First Nations groups. You're the perfect person, Laurie Goldstein, to talk about this. Where do we start? I gotta be transparent. I love Neil Young. Love his music. My dad brought me up on him, so I feel almost sacrilegious saying mean things about him, but I just wish he would just sing.
Yeah. Well, look.
Especially on this issue.
I think Neil Young's a great Canadian artist, and I think he's perfectly entitled to his views. But I really do tire of celebrities who wade into this without knowing the most basic things about the issue. Now, look, when he talks about honoring treaty rights, I think a lot of Canadians share that view. We need to honor our treaty rights with Aboriginals. When he talks about, I think most Canadians want the oil sands, which we consider an asset to be developed responsibly. That's fine. But when you get into this Canadian, we seem to have this thing in Canada where we knife ourselves in the stomach constantly because we don't understand that the oil sands are insignificant when it comes to issues like climate change and pollution. You know, Mr. Young's a Canadian, but he lives in California, which means he lives in the United States. The United States, right now, Obama, in a speech last year, boasted that under his administration, enough oil and gas pipelines had been built to circle the earth and then some. U.S. oil and gas production is exploding. At the end of Obama's term, they will be outproducing Saudi Arabia. U.S. exports of coal, the worst and most polluting and most dangerous of the fossil fuels, are reaching record levels. They're higher today than they've ever been before. When you single out a virtual non-issue like the oil sands and say that it is and compare the oil sands to Hiroshima, which he did the last time, that's utterly meaningless. I'd respect him if he came up here and he said the things he was saying, and then he had said, but you know what? The country I live in now, they're worse because they are worse, and nobody ever calls out Obama on this stuff. It's always about
because
the
he's
evil
the Messiah.
Mr. Harper.
You can't call him Messiah on this. You know that.
It's so absurd and it's so intellectually dishonest. Now, having said that, I know that the federal government responded and they said, well, they basically said it in an obtuse way, has Mr. Young looked at his own carbon footprint? Because it will be massive. You know, these celebrities...
rock concerts and all of it, they don't run on pixie dust.
No, of course, they have to move, they have equipment, and they need reliable electricity, and you don't get that from pixie dust.
I don't think he has a problem with people using iPods and computers to, upload his music and play his music.
You know,
all
of course not.
derivatives of oil.
So it's the inability to recognize that if you're going to talk about this stuff, don't tell me you've bought carbon offsets. Carbon offsets are a scam. The idea that somebody's going to plant a tree and that's going to. There should be a little humility. It's like, well, have you changed your lifestyle? Your carbon footprint, I suspect, is very big. What are you doing not to buy carbon offsets, which is like paying off for? What are you doing to reduce your emissions? And how hard has that been for you? Concert person, he has to go to places, right? He has to physically get there, right? That causes enormous amount of, and so the ultimate thing I find with this is, look, energy is civilization. We saw in Toronto, and we've seen in places like Quebec, and we've seen in places, what happens when you don't have electricity? All of this stuff is going to produce electricity, coal, oil, natural gas, energy. Societies that don't have energy are not, they're in the dark ages. Go up at night and look at North Korea. It's black. It's people live short.
We just went without power here in Toronto, and I'm curious to know how everyone loved that so much, because I think they were probably the first people on the phone to Hydro saying, "Where's my power?"
Exactly, and so the point is, if he's going to do stuff like this, okay, but be consistent, put the problem in perspective. Canada on these issues is a bit player.
Yeah.
I agree with him about treaties, and I agree we should do it as safely as we can, but we have to do it. And to sit there and do this thing of comparing the oil sands to Hiroshima as if we were committing, as if we were bombing Canadians, as if they were the
they're using
enemy.
numbers like hundreds of thousands of people are dying, which is just simply not true.
Look,
I mean,
there's always a concern when you do any form of energy extraction, including rare earth metals for wind turbines, that you disrupt the environment. There may be problems with water contamination, air pollution. Absolutely, we have to do those as responsibly as we can, and it hasn't always been done as responsibly as it could be. But to pretend that the world's going to get by without energy, and then to say this energy will just go into China to, have you noticed that nations all over the world sell their resources? They use their resources and they sell them to other countries.
And direct your argument at China, because China's got the worst carbon footprint on the entire world. You know, it's interesting though, because the oil sands employs the most number of First Nations. The First Nations putting their land disputes that. They do very well by the oil sands.
And it's not just that, it's workers from across the country come to the oil sands. Alberta is certainly the biggest beneficiary of the oil sands. Ontario is the second biggest because of the number of secondary industries it has supporting the oil sands. The whole country benefits from using our resources wisely. But I find it fascinating. In no other country is there this environmental movement that says we should knife ourselves in the stomach, make ourselves less competitive, right, while always apologizing to the rest of the world for, no, we don't have to apologize. Obama has if you think fossil fuel energy is good, frankly, then Obama is your guy, because he's allowed it to explode in the United States. Germany, another so-called jolly green giant, going back to coal. Why? Because they're abandoning nuclear. Why? Because they panicked over Fukushima, which had nothing to do with like the nuclear technology in Europe or here. And frankly, what disappoints me is that they don't get challenged on this when they say those things. That they don't get challenged at the press conference. Well, wait a minute.
No, but I mean, it was a loving. Come on. I mean, David Suzuki was there. You know, they had 3 chairs set out for conservative members that they weren't coming.
I'm not talking about this one. But I'm talking about
in general.
When you put it into public discussion, even if you were the most greenest person imaginable in Canada, commenting or thinking or writing about this issue, you don't just talk about Canada. This is a global issue. Everybody has to buy in. And frankly, that's what the Harper government's been saying from the beginning. While I have a lot of concerns with the Harper government in this file, they're the only ones who say anything that's sane. It's a global problem. Pollution, climate change, these are global issues. They have to be dealt with globally. If we just destroy our economy out of some misguided sense of guilt, which is fed by people like Mr. Young, who hypocritically ignore the rest of the world, we'll be hurting our fellow Canadians, and that's the wrong thing to do.
Indeed, we'll leave it there. Lori, thanks so much. And meanwhile, we've got already, citizen activists stepping up and fighting back against Neil Young. We'll talk to one of those people who designed a song. We'll leave you here on the break as we listen to a little bit about what he penned last night and posted on YouTube.
I wanna give new ways to live. I am a hippie who is really old. I hate the oil sands, they've got to go, man. Alberta workers left out in the cold, but I've got lots of gold. David says